I'm going to turn it over to one of my co-hosts, Narnik, in order to give the introductions.
Hey, all right. Welcome, everyone. It's nice to see everybody. Some faces I remember and some faces are new to me, but hello, how are you? So we are here for the Fentanyl Forum, and we want to acknowledge myself as co-host, and Ruby Green will be asking the questions this evening. We also want to acknowledge the Urban League. Phone calls coming in. I had to put my phone on Do Not Disturb, and I forgot. Sorry. The Urban League at YPN, the TJ Reddick Bar Association, Delta Upsilon Sigma chapter of Sigma Gamma Rho Sorority Incorporated, and the League of Women Voters of Broward County. So welcome all.
All righty. Thank you all once again for attending this event. As you know, there is a fentanyl epidemic devastating the nation, and Broward County is an epicenter. Nationally, the death rate from these drugs have increased by 1,125% between 2011 and 2017, according to the mortality data from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. This drug is increasingly being illegally manufactured and distributed alongside or mixed with other drugs, making it more deadly. It is one of the reasons why we are having this forum today, and it is a very important topic that needed to be addressed. It also just so happened, I'm going to have to share my screen with you all because I was driving in Fort Lauderdale, and I was also passing the airport at one point, but I saw this sign when I was passing the airport and I couldn't get the picture. And then all of a sudden I saw it again. So let me just see if I can share my screen with you all just so you can see. It's obviously something's going on here. There's something going on. It talks about fentanyl deaths in Florida rose 700% in the last 5 years. Be smart, be safe, get help. This is obviously a very, very, very important topic that we needed to be addressed. And I'm glad and so thankful that we're able, even during the storm, to just talk a little bit about it. So I'm going to turn it over to one of our other co-hosts, Brenda Morrison, which is the president of the Urban League Young Professionals Network.
Thank you so much, Ruby. And I will just say before I even have the panelists do self-introductions, I was blown away already by that. And I think it even means more than ever this conversation is timely. Good evening, everyone. My name is Brenda Morrison. I serve as the president for the Urban League of Broward County's Young Professionals Network. And we have some highly esteemed panelists with us this evening who are going to talk about this topic. For everyone who's a panelist, you'll have 2 minutes each to do self-introductions. So we'll begin with our Broward County State Attorney, Mr. Harold Pryor.
Thank you so much. I won't be 2 minutes. My name is Harold Pryor. I'm your Broward County State Attorney. I'm honored and it's truly a privilege to serve on this panel as a past president of TJ Reddick Bar Association and a citizen of this county, not only this state. It's important that we talk about this serious epidemic that is ravaging through our county, but throughout the land.
Thank you so much, and happy to have you on the panel. Next up is our BSO Undersheriff Nichole Anderson. Oh, I think you're muted.
There we go. Good evening, everyone. Nichole Anderson, Colonel with the Sheriff's Office. My position is Undersheriff, born and raised here in Broward County. This forum is very important. We see it on a daily. When I come in the morning and look at what we call our captain's log, it's astonishing the number of overdose calls that we respond to and the deaths that occur as it relates to it. And what I'm most fearful of is our youth. They do not understand the seriousness of it, and it's one of those things where we're seeing the numbers increase with the youth because they're going on social media and acquiring these pills, and we have to do something. I know everybody's been diligent about it, but there has to be something else that we can get this message out to our community.
Thank you so much, Undersheriff Anderson. And again, happy to have you here. Next up is Shannon Scott.
I just wanted to just give you guys this plug in. Miss Scott is actually in surgery right now and she won't be able to attend. So she did send her regards and thanking us for having this panel. And, you know, she wanted me to let you all know.
All right. So moving on to the next panelist, Dr. Leanne Powell.
Hi, good evening, everyone. This is Dr. Leanne Powell. I'm a pharmacist. I am a clinical pharmacist. I've been a pharmacist in multiple settings, including the hospital pharmacy setting. I lived in Broward County for many, many, many years before actually relocating to the Southwest Florida area, which I currently reside. So the Broward County fentanyl epidemic is definitely true and dear to me, and I'm very appreciative to be a part of this panel and to discuss all of the potential ways that we can alleviate this issue. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Powell. Happy to have you here. And last but not least, Rapaglia. Can you go ahead and introduce yourself, Ray?
Hey, thank you. My name is Ray Rapaglia. I am the CEO and founder of James Club Recovery and Foundation. And I'm truly honored to be on this panel with this esteemed group. Our organization is dedicated to helping individuals that struggle with substance abuse, especially fentanyl. I was an opioid addict. I played Division I soccer in college. And 12 and a half years ago, I could not stop doing opioids. Someone helped me. And this month, I have 12 and a half years that I haven't had a drink or a drug. And I learned a solution that I'm very passionate about that we teach in our organization to help individuals that are in the grips of aggressive disease. So I'm very interested in this personally, and we want to help in any way that we can to provide a solution, a concept that could help people not only stop doing opioids and fentanyl, but we teach how to stay stopped. So thank you for allowing me to be on this panel.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. All right, thanks, Brenda, and thanks, Ray, and all the other panelists as well. I just want to let everyone else know, for those of you who are watching via social media and those of you who are also on this Zoom call, we are going to have a question and answer session at the end of the segment. But at first, we do have some prepared questions that we would like to address with the panelists. So first up, I'm going to give this question to Dr. Powell. What is fentanyl?
Thank you, Ruby. Fentanyl is what is considered a synthetic opioid. And for those that don't understand what synthetic means, it means that it was synthesized in a laboratory. So in comparison to, let's say, morphine, for example, and codeine, morphine and codeine are derived from the poppy seed, which means it's naturally occurring. The point of fentanyl being synthesized in a laboratory back in the 1960s was to find, and ironically, safer alternatives for analgesia. But unfortunately, fentanyl has brought us to this conversation where it has been come about as an illicit drug of abuse. So that's pretty much in a nutshell what fentanyl is. And also, let me just add that fentanyl is used safely for such conditions as pain, chronic pain, even acute pain. It's used in sedation. It's used for veterinary purposes. It's used for patients that have end-of-life care, for hospice. So it's used in multiple settings. Thank you.
Okay, so our next question will probably go to either Dr. Power or even BSO, but one of the questions is, what demographic of people does the opioid epidemic affect? I guess, Dr. Powell, you can take it, and then we can have our state attorney, Harold Pryor, talk about what he may know of.
So I think Nicole would be better to answer that question, because a lot of statistics come from, I'm assuming, from all the data that you have collected. So I think Nicole would be better to answer that question.
That would be great.
Yes, we've seen a range of demographics, but if you go by the medical examiners, it's going to be males, the average age of 43 years old, but we've had as young as teenagers. So that's just the higher number of incidents as far as the male ranges of 43 years old. But like I said, it ranges from the teens up into 60, 70-year-old individuals that have fentanyl in their system when they pass.
Do you have data on in terms of race?
It's going to be the majority that we see are white males of that age, but like I said, every day, without surprise, you're gonna see that, okay, we're gonna have a Hispanic male, a Hispanic female. It's shocking, because most of the time when you get your nightly reports with regards to the calls that we respond to, I don't know, over the past couple of days, I've seen a number of females on there, and you know that you are in the throes of an epidemic when you start seeing females affected at a high rate, because most females being mothers, there is that notion of I got to be here to take care of my kids or what have you, but we're seeing the numbers in females increase as well. And that goes to say, well, people don't realize that they don't set out to take fentanyl, but they don't realize that the drug dealers are using fentanyl in so many different ways to heighten the effects of the drugs that they're pushing, and to get those repeat customers if it don't take them out when they use it.
And I see, Ray, you're shaking your head, and that goes with the next question. Why would someone take fentanyl? I understand that there are some situations where they may not necessarily know that it's in the particular drug in which they're used to buying off the streets, but why would someone continue to take it after they've been exposed to it?
It's a great question, and thank you for calling on me. I was shaking my head because the undersheriff was so accurate. Drug dealers try to boast that they have the best product, and you'll get high with that particular drug dealer higher than a different one. And I found that when someone perhaps drinks alcohol or smokes some marijuana, or does a gateway type drug, it then might open the door to do something like fentanyl. Because a lot of people in my facility, we've had over 3,000 men come through our door, would tell me sober they would never consider doing fentanyl. They know that they could die. I personally went to 5 funerals last month. And when someone, however, has a different substance in them, then they're actually looking for that drug dealer to get the best fentanyl they could potentially get. So I'm committed, we're committed to helping in any way we can. So thanks for calling on me.
Okay, so the next question is for State Attorney Pryor. What is law, I'm sorry, is this the right? Yes. What has the federal and the state local government put in place to mitigate this epidemic?
Well, thank you for asking me that question, because that's my major concern, is how do we stop an epidemic? Traditionally, and you hear my daughter, Hailey, but one of the ways that we can stop an epidemic, something like this, particularly dealing with drugs, we can really find ways to really try to discourage people from actually participating in these particular, recreational activities. The problem is, and traditionally what we've done in the criminal justice system, for example, the crack cocaine epidemic, was lock people up. I pride myself, or not pride myself, but I don't hide the fact that I come from a generation of young men, young Black men, millennials who grew up without our uncles, grew up without men in our families as a result of the cocaine epidemic, and really how they treated people with that. And it was normally Black and brown people. If you were a dealer, they locked you up and you were sentenced unfairly as opposed to your white counterparts. It was the 100-to-1 sentencing disparity between crack cocaine and powder cocaine. Now, because we have this epidemic regarding fentanyl, and we see and addresses the question that was brought up or posed earlier, who is it affecting? It's not only affecting Black folk, it's affecting everyone, right? So now everyone is paying particularly close attention to this particular issue because it's not just affecting Black and brown people or poor people, it's affecting the well-to-do people as well. And so have we done some things in law enforcement realm? Yes. Could we be doing more? Yes. I think one thing that we have to do, and I really truly believe we have to do as a legislature, but as a state, we have to encourage the use of testing strips. I believe there was legislation that was proposed in the last legislative session where they would hand out testing strips so people could test the drugs if they choose to use it recreationally. I will say this as a chief law enforcement officer in the circuit and as a chief prosecuting officer in the circuit, I do know by no means am I encouraging the recreational use of drugs, right? However, I do think there's preemptive measures that we can take as a society to keep people safe. And so I think what we can do and what has been done, there has been work with the DEA, there has been work with our local law enforcement agencies, BSO, and the other 18 or so agencies throughout the county to try to educate people. But also there is a component, and I have to say this, we have to be tough on the dealers. This is different. It's truly different from when I grew up with, where the people that I knew that sold crack or sold drugs during the crack cocaine epidemic, they're doing it because there was a lack of opportunity. They saw it as a way to make money, to try to put clothes on their back, to feed their families. This is different when we have cases where people are knowingly stepping on drugs, adding fentanyl to drugs, knowing how lethal it is and that it could actually kill people. To me, that's a different degree of culpability. And I think we have to hold those individuals accountable. And that's what my office is doing. But, you know, there's some statistics that I would love to share with you all from the DEA. So from January to June, and we're waiting for the statistics for the remainder of the year, the DEA releases statistics on emerging threats. It's called the Emerging Threat Report. And they also do it on certain substances and fentanyl. From January to June, there are about 4,418 identifications of fentanyl and fentanyl-related compounds, other than other opioids, excuse me. Fentanyl accounted for approximately 77% of the opioid identifications of drugs and drug-related cases. Of the 3,413 identifications, fentanyl was found as the only controlled substance in 60% of the identifications, and with heroin in approximately 14. So this goes back to the earlier point, they're adding fentanyl with heroin. Fentanyl is now being added with weed. What we're seeing now, people are dying from smoking weed, right? You think that joint that you're smoking is safe, they're now lacing it with fentanyl and it could be lethal. And so this is a dangerous time. So I think we really need to pay attention to the statistics, but I think our approach has to be twofold. I think it has to be heavy-handed on the traffickers. Let me be clear, the traffickers, the people that are knowingly doing this and knowingly lacing these drugs with fentanyl, and also an education component with the people who are buying and possessing drugs and using drugs recreationally.
And that just goes into our next question for Undersheriff Anderson. What is law enforcement doing to mitigate the infiltration of illegally made fentanyl in the community?
Well, like State Attorney Pryor said, it's a collaborative effort across the board, because we just can't think that law enforcement is the cure-all for everything. We're in the schools. I know that about a month or so ago, it made the news where they're showing that they have these fentanyl pills that look like the Skittles. People are targeting our youth. They put them in gummy bears. And so what we try to do is educate people. And you don't want to get to the point where you have to scare people, but sometimes you have to, in that sense that, like, it's a shame. I've told my child, I have a 14-year-old, and I told him at school, don't you take candy, food, drinks from anyone. If you want something, go to the school bookstore to buy whatever snack you want or what have you, because kids get, they get complacent and jaded to the fact that this is reality. And then some even think it's funny when they give somebody that's something that's laced and the person starts to trip off of that. And, you know, you want to laugh and say, oh, so-and-so did what? With fentanyl, just two grains of salt in the amount of fentanyl can take somebody out. And we see it on a daily. So we're educating our youth. We've encouraged our district captains, not just law enforcement, fire rescue, when you're out and about, to speak to the community about this, you know, not trying to, you know, scare people, but it's just reality. In our jail facilities, we do offer, you know, the different programs with regards to narcotics. It's just all hands on deck right now. We're not leaving any stone unturned. You know, you might be going to a program that deals with something that's far removed from drug use, but you know what? It's incumbent upon us to bring it up, because a person at that event could have a family member going through, you know, addiction. So it's wherever the opportunity that we get to speak to the community, that's where we're going to bring it up and make people aware of how deadly this drug is.
Good, that's good stuff. That takes us into the question, and this could be directed to you, Dr. Powell. Can you tell if your drugs have, if you're taking, you know, recreational drugs, or how, you know, State Attorney Harold Pryor mentioned, can you tell if there's fentanyl in them?
Just by looking at it, no. As he mentioned, the fentanyl test strips are a good way to really know if what substance you have in front of you has fentanyl. Now, this is the thing. Fentanyl is supposed to be a prescription medication. So here we are talking about the illicit use and the unauthorized use of fentanyl. So if someone gets any type of fentanyl, and you'll see, like, for example, they have so many TV shows, like on National Geographic, they talk about the Border Patrol, and they have different white substances, and they actually literally have to test and put it in the little baggie to have that chemical reaction. So you can't just look at it and see or determine that it's fentanyl. You literally have to test it in order to determine if it is fentanyl.
Wow, that's crazy, because so many people are so exposed to that, not being able to figure out what it is. You know, even something, and I'm not promoting that, but even smoking weed is just become a death sentence these days. All right, taking it back to you, Ruby.
All right, this is for, seems like Dr. Powell, we did get this question or these questions from the community. Is fentanyl addictive, and can it poison me?
Fentanyl, as we've already established, is a potent synthetic opioid. It is 50 to 100 times more potent than morphine. Any sort of exposure to fentanyl can potentially poison you, but let's be clear that fentanyl used within the medical setting, in a controlled medical setting, in a clinic, in a hospital setting, when you have physicians monitoring patients, in those cases, you should not have so-called addiction. Now, we do know that for patients that are exposed to opioids, it can lead to addiction, but we don't want the general public thinking, oh my goodness, you know, my dentist gives me a medication, or if my physician in a hospital gives me fentanyl, that I'm just automatically going to be addicted to it. No, it is not the case. The fact that it is potent, yes, puts it in a category where it can be addictive, and especially since it is categorized as a Schedule II controlled substance regulated by the DEA, and also the fact that this medication, when exposed in even as little as 2 milligrams, can cause death to a human being.
And also, may I add, and correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Powell, there's so many different variations of fentanyl, correct? And also there are people, it's easy to get, people aren't getting them from traditional medical settings. People can order it online from China, and someone is actually doctoring up in their own factory. So there's different compounds that make it even more potent. And that's the more dangerous aspect of it. And it's one of the more cheaper components or opioids that you can get. And that's why it's so accessible. That's why we've seen the accessibility as of recent, because it's so cheap to get online.
Absolutely. And once again, I'm telling you that I'm a big documentary fan, and I was actually watching an episode of a show recently, and it talked about an individual who was making millions from pill pressing fentanyl that was acquired. So the actual substance was acquired from China, and that substance was then used in a pill press that you can purchase online. And then the actual medications are then sold on the dark web. And that's another area that unfortunately is really hard to really target, the dark web. And that dark web is where a lot of your illegal and illicit fentanyl is being funneled.
Wow. This question goes to Undersheriff Anderson. How does law enforcement reduce illicit drug exposure? What are safety measures you're using in the streets, like when you come in contact with someone that you think may be on fentanyl? Or because we've seen some things on shows on TV where officers accidentally are exposed to fentanyl, and then they in turn have to get medical help. What kind of processes and procedures that you guys put in place to protect your officers as well as protect the community?
Actually, I had wrote a note to bring that up as far as the dangers of actually for law enforcement and for fire rescue when they're on scene. It's one of those things that this is so potent that you just get a whiff of it. And you're not even in direct contact of touching it. I think the most powerful video that I saw was, I think, out of Los Angeles, somewhere in California, where it was a trainee, and they had taken this guy into custody, and all he did was pop the back gate to the SUV, and he just slid the duffel bag to the edge, and it was probably within 10 seconds, blacked out, fell out. They had to hit him with like 3 doses of Narcan to kind of bring him out of that. And when rescue finally got there, he still wasn't, fully conscious, but it was enough that they could start working him. That is my fear for all first responders on the daily, with regards to you put your life on the line because you're out there trying to help in the community, and you get exposed to that. We try to explain that to individuals in the community. Sometimes people don't want to hear, because when you're caught in the throes of addiction, nothing anybody's going to tell you. I think when especially when you're under the influence. So we encourage first responders to always glove up before you start touching anything. And back in the day where the deputies or officers go in the car and just start tossing things around and looking for things, I think that there's an air of caution now in that, hey, let me just take my time, let me get a visual and see what I'm looking at. And we encourage individuals out in the street, and I'm with State Attorney Pryor with regards to, I don't condone recreational use of narcotics or drugs or anything illegal, but I I don't know any way to give it but straight. And I tell people weed's not regular weed anymore.
That's right.
You gotta know who you're dealing with. You can't just go to anybody. And, so that's the message we put out to the community. And as far as the first responder is that, you take the necessary precautions. Take those few seconds to put your gloves on and your protective gear before you go running into a situation, because you can't help anybody when you're incapacitated.
Okay, so I'm gonna just piggyback on that, Undersheriff Anderson. So are your first responders and your police officers outfitted with Narcan in their vehicles, or just for safety reasons? And Harold, State Attorney Pryor, when a situation happens like that and an officer or a first responder gets affected that way, will there be a charge imposed on the person who is being arrested for the effects of the officer? Will that be an additional charge? So that was just twofold. I just wanted to find out that information. Undersheriff Anderson.
It's going to depend upon the situation, because if you have somebody that's addicted to drugs and, like I said, they're in the throes of addictions, there is no criminal intent with them. They're just looking for their next high. But when you're dealing with a drug dealer, then by all means, just like State Attorney Pryor said, those are the people that we have to be tough on, because you knowingly put people at risk. So you don't want to compound a situation when somebody's in the throes of addiction. It's more of to mitigate their situation and try to get them help.
Right, and the officers, do they have Narcan in their vehicles to protect them, or are they outfitted with that now at this stage, or that's just something that you guys play by ear by right now?
No, they have Narcan, and it's for the community as well as their fellow officers if need be. I carry Narcan in my vehicle. I don't know when I'm going to roll up on a situation where it may be needed. I could be minding my business and be at the grocery store and something happens, and you know what? I'm on duty 24/7. So we've outfitted all of our deputies and our and it goes without saying that our fire rescue personnel has it, but it's one of those things where it has saved lives.
Yeah, and I can piggyback on that. I'll say this about, Undersheriff Anderson, thank you so much. But also I can say this about the head of that agency, Sheriff Tony. He is dedicated to ensuring that his deputies and staff the necessary equipment and tools that they need to be productive and to help those in our society, whether it be people with mental health issues. He's been innovative in that, but also with ensuring that they have the supplies that they need to help someone who may be going through a traumatic experience like an overdose. With the scenario you posed, it's all on a case-by-case basis. But however, when you have a situation where a person, they're dealing with an addiction issue, obviously we want to treat that person according to that. I think many of you should take solace in knowing that you have a sheriff, but also you have a state attorney here who understands those distinctions. I don't like to throw people in the one category of criminal offender. Let's lock them up, throw away the key. Because if I did that, I'd ignore my circumstances or my family circumstances. I've had family members who were addicted to drugs and made terrible decisions because they're looking for their next high, right? And I understood that they weren't bad people. They were beholden to their addiction, right? And had the system address their issues accordingly, they wouldn't be repeat offenders. They actually be productive citizens of society because we addressed that root cause of the issue. So here at the state attorney's office, we try to really look at these cases, read between the lines, and look at those nuances. Is this person a trafficker, right? Is this person a dealer? Is this person addicted to a particular drug and they actually just happen to be in possession of it? But also, is this person a middleman, a middle dealer, someone that can lead us to a bigger fish, right? And so those are things that you have to look at when you work with BSO, when you work with the various law enforcement agencies to try to work up the ladder. And that's normally what it is. Normally a situation, someone dies of an overdose or there's an overdose, right? We're normally getting the phone, we're getting evidence, we're trying to work our way up the ladder to get to the bigger fish. And I think that's just been the nuance and the difference in prosecution and criminal investigation with dealing with drug issues, particularly in fentanyl, rather than saying, okay, let's just punish this dealer or punish this possessor, the person that's in possession of the drug, rather than trying to move up the ladder and get to the root cause of the issue. And so I know that's BSO's focus, and I know that's my office focus when we're working with them on these various task force, when we're working with the DEA and other federal agencies. And so we try to look at it from that perspective. You know, we have in the state attorney's office, we have between 700 and 800 pending various fentanyl charges going. That's under about 1,000. I know there could be more, but that's where we are right now. And so it's tough, but we're being tough with those, particularly with the trafficking of fentanyl. And we're very aggressive in how we investigate that and how we work with our law enforcement agencies. But to answer your question, we really try to pay attention to details to make those distinguishers of trafficker, dealer versus a person who may be addicted to drugs.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Pryor and Undersheriff Anderson, working in. All right, Ray, I have a two-part question for you. How does your recovery program deal with addiction? And have you seen the effects of fentanyl from those in the program? And I know you talked a little bit about this, but this was a question that we did get from the community.
Thank you, Ruby. It's so wonderful, our attorney and our truly understand about addiction, because there is such a distinction. Recovery industry, it's apparent that county is now, in my opinion, the recovery capital of the world. And individuals that are trying to stay clean and sober, work program. And we're dedicated to providing them a program, a concept, individuals that have that willingness, that are sincere about wanting to turn their lives around, about helping people that want to do what's right. I was addicted myself, and I know how powerful opioids are and how powerful fentanyl is. And I feel the same way as the Honorable Harold Pryor. I'm very careful to look at someone who's a drug dealer, not a drug user, because the person who's using in this very powerful disease, it never gets better, it always gets worse. And I find that people who come into recovery houses like mine, who attempt to stay clean, are most vulnerable because the relapse rate is so high. So we're dedicated to providing a solution at James Club to teach people how to stay clean and sober, how to have a purposeful life, how to give back to the community, how to add to the stream of life. And to me, that's what's most important. So it's just really an honor to be on this panel. And as I said, we want to help in any way we can. We currently have a doctor in our facility. We have a few attorneys. The disease does not discriminate. And it's just getting worse and worse. As the undersheriff said, there's now candied fentanyl that's being disguised as Skittles. That scares me. Tracy, my wife, and I, we have 5 children. And it's just apparent that as a community working together, we can make a difference. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rapaglia. This question is actually for Dr. Powell. Someone asks, are there physical symptoms a person might experience after helping someone who's overdosed that could be interpreted as symptoms of exposure to, I guess, the fentanyl drug?
So let me just make sure I understand. So when we say exposure, like inhalation, are we talking about skin contact? Because Undersheriff Anderson did kind of give a pretty good example of, her law enforcement officers that had exposure and what it did to them. So I just want to make sure that I'm addressing it from whatever perspective.
I'm thinking that they're saying, are there particular symptoms that someone who has possibly overdosed on fentanyl may have as opposed to another drug?
Okay, so with regards to fentanyl and the side effects that fentanyl will exhibit once a person has overdosed, we see the classic symptoms. We see the respiratory depression, which means that the breathing has slowed. And essentially, why someone would overdose and lead up to death is because the breathing has stopped and oxygen is no longer going to those vital organs. It's not, especially the brain. We know that fentanyl is a poison. We know that it's addictive in many capacities. So if an individual does overdose on fentanyl, we know that first and foremost, so let's say you see someone that potentially might have overdosed on fentanyl, then are they arousable? Are they in a state of euphoria? Are they in a situation where if you try to, if you have that capability to look at their, pinpoint pupils, those are some of the classic symptoms that will end up occurring for someone when they overdose on fentanyl. And I hope I addressed the question properly.
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely. So this could be for Undersheriff Anderson or State Attorney Pryor. You both, any one of you can answer this question. We're going in the chat. Is fentanyl affordable? I think State Attorney Pryor alluded to that it was somewhat cheap. What does it cost for an illegal dose? Is the drug sold illegally, one dose at a time, or in large enough quantities to support the habit for a week or more? And this question is coming from Susan Matz in the chat.
I'll step up. You can get a hit of fentanyl for as cheap as $2. So yes. So
I will, I'll piggyback on that. That's why it's so dangerous. It put like this, I hate to say it. I mean, it's almost as a business venture in illegal criminal activity or illegal criminal enterprise. It's probably most lucrative with how cheap it is. You could buy it pennies on a dollar. I mean, you could get amounts like by the pound cheaper. And you get it and you can sell it for, if you get the pill machine that Dr. Powell alluded to, you can buy it on Amazon and you can press the pills. You sell those pills between 20, 30 bucks a pop, right? You do the math. That's how lucrative of a business it is for something so potent. So it's dangerous. And it's easy to get. And it's something that we really need our legislators to really press, to really push. I think you see the response the BSO led when we had that flock outbreak here in Broward County, how they actually went to the root cause of the issue and really worked with our federal agencies to really get to the root cause of it. The problem with this is, as Dr. Powell alluded to as well, it's a regulated and legal drug, opioid, right? You have the FDA that's involved in that as well. And so that makes it even more complicated. It makes it even more complex of an issue to combat and fight. And so we're fighting so many different factors here. You have something that can be found in almost any opioid that we have legally. And then also you have the component where it can be bought. I'm not even talking about the dark web. I mean, throw out the dark web. You could go online right now and get it, and that's bad. And those are the factors that we're fighting right now, and that's why it makes it tough, but it's not impossible. I think if we continue to work together and communicate with each other, both federally and locally, and also community forums like this, informing and educating the community, and we all agree to work together to combat this, we'll fight it back like anything else. But we just have to have open lines of communication. We have to get stakeholders together and be willing to work together to combat this issue.
I'm going to be checking all my food and drinks from now on.
well, think about this, and this is why it's so dangerous. Lunch for students is like $5.25. Just say $5. If you buy a nickel bag of weed and they've laced that weed with the fentanyl, you're paying $5, $10 per dime bag. There you have it. That's just how cheap it is, because they can sprinkle just a little bit in that. And if it don't take you out, you're gonna be high and you're gonna say, oh, this dealer has the good stuff. I'm going back to this person. And that's how they attract you back. So they don't have to give you the ones and I'll give you an example. The incident where we had the was it the Citadel football players? We were able to track their dealer down in less than 24 hours. But this is the thing. It was laced with the fentanyl. It wasn't just straight fentanyl, but look how quick it took those healthy athletes out. And they just thought that they was getting some cocaine. And just, I can't impress upon these young people enough that know that it's not even safe to smoke marijuana. And I know people say, oh, it comes from the earth and this, that, and the other. Now, because people it is weed, not regular weed anymore. So it's one of those things where we just have to be cautious in everything. And the fact that an individual goes online to buy what they perceive as a normal prescription drug, somebody selling it online should tell you something that it's not what you think it is. And that's what we try to get the youth to understand, that if they're selling it online, it's not the real deal. And just like State Attorney Pryor said, those pill press are big money makers. And that's something that I feel like legislature should address as well. Why do people even have access to that? That should just be a medical tool for, pharmaceutical companies or things of that nature. So that's one way, that's a start in eliminating all of this that's going on as well.
I'm going to get back to the questions, but I just had this one question. Growing up, I remember we had DARE programs. Do we have a form of DARE now, or is DARE still in existence, or just so that we can raise awareness in schools on kids and drugs, how it doesn't mix, it doesn't go over well?
Yes, our school resource officers still participate in that with that. And believe it or not, that's how I have a worksheet that I know that our deputies was passing out to their students to check, my son's apps on his phone, because it's crazy that you see an app that you think that it's nothing to it. It's a kid app, and it's actually a chat where you have adults chatting with children, or they're chatting amongst themselves about illegal things. And then as far as even these pill parties, that the youth are going into their parents' medical cabinets and just grabbing pills, and they have a party and they dump all these pills in a bowl, and they take, go in there and get a pill and take it. And it could be a pill for diabetes, but then you don't know if it's oxycodone, you don't know if the pill has fentanyl in it. And these are the things that we have to deal with as far as our youth. So it's not just worrying about the dealers out there on the streets. We have, like you said, the dark web. It's just, we're fighting on all corners right now.
Oh, well, that's good to know that you're fighting. All right, question from the chat, Sandra Schaeffer. How successful are rehabilitation programs for individuals addicted to fentanyl? Do they have to enter rehab more than once to be successful? And is rehab covered by insurance? I assume this is going to go to Mr. Rapaglia.
Yeah, I saw the question. It's actually a very good question. And on behalf of the recovery industry and a person that's in long-term recovery, I believe in permanent sobriety. For certain individuals, take my wife, for example, she can go to a restaurant and have a glass of wine. But for men and women in recovery like myself, our literature teaches us we lost control. So we cannot just be a casual drinker or maybe smoke a little pot. And that's the population I worry about, those brothers and sisters of mine that are in recovery, that are trying to stay clean. The relapse rate, unfortunately, is high unless someone works an effective program of recovery. And that's what I teach. I believe desire, willingness, even knowing consequence of using drugs will not keep a person clean and sober. They need to work. They need to pay the price and work a program of recovery, which includes long-term structured sober living. I'm a big believer in that. I've seen so many people stay clean and sober, become law-abiding citizens. And with that, we go to meetings at night. In fact, in just a little while, we're having a big book study here at our center. We do different groups. We share our innermost feelings, and often mental health issues go hand in hand with substance abuse. So there are some really good facilities in Broward County that accept insurance. We don't. We have seen a very high success rate for individuals that work this unique program that we teach. Often we work with the court system. So somebody might be ordered to our program and they might come in a little bit kicking and screaming. But then when they experience the joy of sobriety, of helping others, of doing volunteer work, of giving back to the community, of having a purpose, which I believe is the key to happiness. It's a really wonderful way of life for someone who is struggling with addiction for many years. So why the fentanyl epidemic is so important to me personally, I've seen so many of my brothers and sisters that come into recovery, have a relapse because the relapse rate is high, and then it becomes fatal because, as the Undersheriff and the Honorable Harold Pryor had mentioned about other drugs, and of course the doctor mentioned as well, being laced. And that's what's really concerning. So I think attempting to teach people how to stay clean and sober can really help as well with the recidivism rate, which we're also dedicating to making progress with. So yes, I think rehab facilities are very important, but there's many different programs. So I just wanted to add that as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So this question is probably, I don't know if the Undersheriff and or the Mr. Pryor can answer this question, but this is the school question. Is a two-part. I'm going to add the two together. One of the questions from the League of Women Voters is, do schools have Narcan available? And then the other part is from Miss Pierre Efford. I don't want to mess up your name. Forget it. I'm not going to say it. What resources are available to schools that can be shared with parents and students? Does BSO or the state attorney's office, do you guys partner with the schools and do you provide information? And then where do you guys go? Where's the collaboration where that is concerned as far as educating the students, parents to keep an eye out? I know the Undersheriff alluded to a couple of things. And so did the Honorable Harold Pryor. So I just wanted to know where you guys are with that.
Well, I'm not sure if the school staff have Narcan on available to them, but all of the resource officers that are assigned to the schools do have Narcan. Also, as far as the resource officers being engaged with the schools and disseminating the information that we get. We have meetings with our school resource officers, especially on those teacher work days and the days that they're out of school. It's not just, okay, the deputies are just off doing whatever. We have organized training and they take this back to the schools. That's part of being a school resource officer. It's not that, okay, I get to go sit at school, I'm not out on the streets. No, you have to be engaged with the students. You have to be engaged with the parents. They work hand in hand with the school. That, you know, it's the responsibility of the school to send out notifications when things happen. And we try to take advantage of that, in that when we see stuff that needs to be disseminated to the parents, to have the school to stay on top of that and get that out. So we have to work hand in hand with our school staff to ensure the safety of our youth. It wouldn't work if we didn't.
Yeah, I guess to piggyback on that, you know, we have a drug trafficking unit, and traditionally our drug trafficking unit was sole purpose was to prosecute drug trafficking related cases. Now we also have an education component of it. The chief of my drug trafficking unit, Denise Nooner, she's amazing. She's an expert in the field. She actually does a lot of training for BSO and a lot of other law enforcement agencies in the drug trafficking arena, and also keeping them abreast as to new developments with the statute. We've also expanded that to community engagement, reaching out and informing them on how it's affecting our communities, but also they should know the penalties that we're enforcing when we deal with these particular crimes, particularly trafficking. You know, some of you may or may not know, on October 1st of this year, we saw the mandatory minimums for trafficking increase. The Florida legislature increased the mandatory minimums that you have for trafficking. So if you're trafficking between 4 and 14 grams, currently the mandatory minimum for that is 7 years. If it's between 14 and 28 grams, it's been increased up to 20 years. It used to be 15 years. And for 28 grams, if you're trafficking 28 grams or more, the mandatory minimum now is 25 years. So, you know, those are things that we try to educate the community on, that we are being tough on those who are trafficking fentanyl. Now, when it comes to those individuals who may be possessing it, those are very small cases where you may find someone with a very small amount of fentanyl, just the component of fentanyl. We try to look at those on a case-by-case basis. We have drug court, we have diversion programs. If we identify that that person has a drug addiction issue, we will then address it. But if we're looking at a case and there's evidence of dealing, but it doesn't reach that threshold of trafficking, we're going to prosecute that individual to the fullest extent of the law. But like I said, many of you should take solace in knowing that you have a state attorney's office. We encourage our prosecutors to look at cases and look up those nuances and read between the lines. But, you know, that's what we're doing. We're trying to educate whenever people will give us the forum and the opportunity to do it. And we'll continue to do that as an office to ensure that our community is better informed.
Thank you, State Attorney Pryor. This next question, I know we've talked a lot about exposure to the drug, skin contact, maybe breathing it through the air. This person asks, what will your message be to the ordinary person who is concerned about the idea of trying to give life-saving care to somebody who is having an overdose because they're worried about actually being exposed to the drug?
I think Dr. Powell should answer that question, or maybe
Yes,
Undersheriff.
Yeah, I thought I said Dr. Powell. I'm sorry, Dr. Powell for sure.
So if someone is concerned about being exposed to the medication in the presence of assisting an individual that needs, life-saving treatment, let's really go through this process here. So if you happen to have, let's say, an accidental overdose, let's just come from that perspective, then of course you call 911, okay? And then you contact poison control. That is definitely a number that everyone needs to have at home at all times. The idea is if someone is a repeat offender, if they're constantly an habitual overdoser on fentanyl or any opioids, if they're using it for chronic pain, if they're using it for even a short-term pain, but it's high dosing, we need to have that Narcan at home available. Narcan is like the EpiPen for people who have allergies. You need to have it available, because if that individual is in a panic, the individual that's trying to at least assess a situation and feel that they need to help someone in a, once again, life-threatening situation, you need to kind of have those tools at hand, and Narcan is the primary tool to have. The exposure, however, we kind of also have to think about the fact that, let's say a person is concerned about, skin exposure. Now, technically, fentanyl it has a formulation that can be transferred through the skin through a patch. So it is not necessarily one of the things that someone should be like, oh my God, I'm going to be addicted to fentanyl because I'm exposed to it via the skin. But anyone that feels that they should be exposed, at the same time, once again, you can contact poison control, and poison control can walk you through the steps as to how you can alleviate or mitigate that exposure, because not everyone has Narcan at home, and you can get Narcan from a pharmacy. It's available without a prescription. So that is pretty much at best how I can at least give you the steps in the most normal circumstances for someone that is trying to assist someone in a life-threatening overdose situation, and they themselves feel that they've been exposed to the fentanyl.
All right, so we're gonna, this is the time where we're just about to wrap up, but we wanna open it up to anyone who has questions for our panelists, concerns, or any resources that you wanna provide, because this is being taped and it will be also available on the League of Women Voters page. So if you have any questions, concerns, or any resources or suggestions, you're open to the floor now to ask away. Now, don't everybody talk all at once now. Come on.
I think our panelists did so well. I think there was just one more question in the chat that I'm just checking on right quick, just to make sure. Oh, okay, Susan Max. I'm sorry, Susan, if I messed up your last name. Is fentanyl the primary illegal drug being pushed in South Florida? Undersheriff Anderson.
It's not primary. I think marijuana is highly used because people think it's just a natural thing. But fentanyl is being used to cut a lot of the drugs that are on the streets, and that's where the issue lies. We find very few cases of just straight fentanyl. We do have those cases, but they're not as common as the cocaine laced with fentanyl, the heroin laced with fentanyl. So fentanyl is being used in conjunction with a lot of drugs.
Okay, thank you. Just want to say, oh, another message popped up. I don't know what it's going to say. Oh, okay. Oh, thank you, Susan. Susan said the amount of info presented here has been amazing, really interesting and informative. Thank you all so much. So thank you, Susan. She basically gave our our ending credits at this point. I just want to say thank you to all of our panelists: State Attorney Pryor, Undersheriff Nichole Anderson, Ray Rapaglia, CEO of James Club Recovery, and Dr. Leanne Powell. Thank you all so much for attending this forum tonight. It has been very informative, just like Susan said. Also want to give a shout out to, I see Madam President of the League of Women Voters, Broward County, Monica Elliott. She has been hosting this event and recording for us. I see Madam President of the Delta Upsilon Sigma chapter of Sigma Gamma Rho Sorority Incorporated, Ms. Rhonda Grant, online. And I also see it looks like Alexia Hudson from the TJ Reddick Bar Association. She's Madam President for this year as well. And of course, one of our co-hosts, Brenda Morrison, you heard from her a little bit earlier. She is the president of the Urban League of Broward County Young Professionals Network. So if we don't have any other business to attest to tonight,
Before we go, can we just have the panelists give out their information? So if there's anybody who has questions or need resources that they can reach out to. I know State Attorney Pryor mentioned a couple of people in his with his team, but maybe there is resources that they can provide and help it. Undersheriff Anderson, if they can give out any kind of general information to kind of help us, give the community information, a source of resources, place to go to if they have any questions, that would be great. Their information, their emails, their numbers, that would be great if that's possible.
yeah, if you want to put it in the chat, if you can.
Yeah,
Yep.
I'll put it in the chat. I'll put it in the chat, and also I'll announce
Probably be
it.
easier.
Check out our website, BrowardSAO.com. If you want to email me directly, we do check the email. It's SAO17@BrowardSAO.com. That's SAO17@BrowardSAO.com.
Yeah, Undersheriff put all her information there.
Yes.
Oh, no.
We actually have a dedicated individual, and they actually do presentations, and I'm going to put her information on here, but I'll put mine as well. And this is who we go to. She's our substance abuse educator.
Thank you so much. And President Elliott, if we are able to capture that information so we can also provide resources to our community. I know that you're recording it, and I'm hoping that we can get that information in the chat and also have a running list so we can provide to our community if they have any questions or concerns.
Definitely, we can put this all together in a document and put that on our website. I mean, this has just been an eye opener. Absolute eye opener.
I was floored by the amount of money that I was floored. I was
Kudos.
literally in shock. I had to cover my mouth. I was floored by this information. And I think it's really important that our community understands and knows what we're dealing with. I think it makes the job of the state attorney and the undersheriff helpful for us to learn and know and be able to be a source of resource to us, and we a source of resource to them, so we can at least try to eradicate this horrendous drug. So like, I was floored.
Yeah, I mean, I was floored too when I first was hearing about this drug and the things that it has caused people to do. It's just so crazy how the things that you decide to do on your own personal time can affect the lives of other people. So people just need to be aware. And just like Undersheriff Anderson said, like, I'm not trying to scare you, but you do need to be aware. I've seen some things that I'm not really privy to talk about here, but I've seen some things.
Yeah, thank you all so very much. We didn't get to the part about talking about how we do with like the those who are, who have the marijuana cards and these dispensaries and all that, and how that works into it. I'm pretty sure that's a whole gamut of all of the extra foolery. But this information today was extremely, extremely helpful. I'm more versed in fentanyl than I've ever been in my life, and I'm grateful for the panel for being transparent and really direct in how they present the information, because we can't sugarcoat this information. It needs to be delivered the way it was today, and really, really appreciate you all for giving us your time in Nichole era with this storm around us. And we know that you have children and families, but we do appreciate you taking the time, addressing the community, and being a source of resource and a source of help for us. So thank you.
And if you guys don't know Ray Rapaglia, he is like one of the leading programs at the Broward County Courthouse at this point in time. Like, a lot of resources that he has, assisting the people that are in his program to become productive members of society by, getting them jobs, basically reintroducing them into, being the person that they should have been had it not been for them being addicted to drugs. So, this has been so Good. I was I was hoping that the storm didn't come today because I really wanted to make it happen, because last time we had to cancel it because of the storm, and then this time another storm came. I was like, "Oh, please, no." But we got through it, and I'm just gonna say thank you once again to everyone. Be safe out there. I don't think we have any further business, right? Going once, going twice. Good night, everyone.